Trigger warning, this podcast contains mature themes and discussions of cults, manipulation, and trauma. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Cultimatum, the culture of cults and human trafficking, where we expose the dark side of control, manipulation, and the human stories behind them. I'm Anonymous Andrew, executive producer and investigator into cult dynamics and coercive control.
And I'm Melody, a cult survivor and advocate for awareness and healing.
This is Cultimatum. Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Cultimatum podcast, the culture of cults and human trafficking. And my name is Anonymous Andrew. And with me tonight is my co-host, Melody. Who do we have tonight, Melody?
Andrew, today we are joined by Peter Young, an author of a memoir titled Stop the Tall Man, Save the Tiger. Peter grew up inside a small, unnamed religious cult led by a man that members referred to as Uncle Robert, a figure who held absolute authority over the members, despite not actually being related to any of them. In his memoir, Peter pulls back the curtain on life inside this cult, exploring how control, fear, and loyalty were enforced and what it looked like to finally break free and leave. Peter is here to share his story with us. Peter, welcome to Cultimatum.
Melody and Andrew, thank you very much. Appreciate you allowing me to share my story. And it's a bizarre one. You know, before I published my memoir, unfortunately, because of what happened to me in my life, I've got attorneys. And my one attorney said, well, maybe instead of writing a memoir, you could turn this into a novel and fictionalize it. And my answer to him was, no one would believe it. So my story goes back to 1995. I was a sports broadcaster, and I was in Pocatello, Idaho, and I was working for the local ABC affiliate. Mid to late 20s, wasn't married, but there was this beautiful woman in town that I had seen. I call her Paige in my book. She was my future wife. And she's tall, 6'1" blonde, and I had never met her. And my buddy Gary and I were working out in the gym, and I described her to him, and he says, "Oh, I know who that is," and he told me her name. And he said, "But be careful, because she and her sister and their family, they have this really weird family guru." And didn't even know the name yet. So I heard about the family guru before I ever met my future wife. Now, I should go back a little bit and just say I was born and raised in New Jersey to a wonderful Christian home. My parents are still around. They've been married almost 70 years. I have 4 older brothers. They were not involved in any of this. So I had a wonderful upbringing and never thought I'd be in a cult, never knew anybody in a cult. So I eventually meet Paige at a singles Bible study, and was smitten immediately. Within 2 weeks, I knew I was about 90% sure I wanted to marry her. But she talked about her father and this Uncle Robert guy all the time. I thought to myself, if I'm going to marry this woman, they're going to have a big part of my life as well. So I met her father about a month later around Thanksgiving. I was in southern Idaho. Parents lived in northern Idaho. And I just gotten there and said hi. And then I go down the hallway. I got to go to the bathroom. I'm a guy. I stand up to pee. As soon as I come back out, right as I open the door to the bathroom, there is my future father-in-law. And he's standing really close. And he says, I heard you go to the bathroom. In our house, all the men, I asked the men sit down to pee. I thought, well, that's kind of weird. And then he said, it's cleaner, reduces splashing. And then he said a phrase that I heard hundreds of times after that. Uncle Robert taught us that. Uncle Robert taught me that. And I thought, wow, okay, Uncle Robert taught everybody to sit down to pee.
I can't stop laughing.
Wow.
That is the most bizarre thing I've ever heard. At least I'll just say on this podcast. Go ahead, Melody.
Oh, I was just going to say that was probably the start of the control factor.
Yeah.
Listen,
that was my first introduction to it.
We're coming up on 100 episodes, and I've heard some really wacky stuff, but I think that one takes the cake. The cult coercion, mind control, it goes deep, and of course, I'm not going to make light of any kind of like abuse and child abuse and things like that. But to say you have to sit down to pee, it's okay. I'm sorry.
Well, and the fact that he was listening to know whether or not you did or didn't is also a little invasive.
Oh my God! Yeah, like he was at the door listening to you. Okay.
That was the first awkward thing, that he was listening, and then what he followed up and said was the second awkward thing. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
So my future in-laws met Uncle Robert early 70s before my future wife Paige was even born. He was born and raised in Syria. Doesn't look anything like me or my former wife or in-laws. And then met them at the seminary in Fresno, California, and then started this obviously very unhealthy parasitic relationship. I bring this up because Paige grew up in this cult. She knew no other life, where Uncle Robert was the expert on everything. And you now know, on literally everything in terms also how the men pee. He was the expert on everything. So after that meeting, I thought, well, okay, this guy's a little odd, but, harmless. And then about 6 months later, I finally got to meet Uncle Robert, whose real name is Robert Booty, but we all called him Uncle Robert. And again, my future wife was talking about him all the time. Met him at her brother's wedding, and I thought, he's a little eccentric and odd, but I didn't see him to be a big danger or threat to my life. I did think it was very odd the way she always talked about him. So we did get married. He lived in Southern California. We lived in Idaho and then moved to Montana. So he wasn't always around us, but my wife would talk to him on the cell phone all the time. And he was always a cell phone call away. And for several years, the first years of our marriage, I thought we had the greatest marriage ever. I was the best husband ever. She was the best wife ever. And the only really fly in the ointment was this weird Uncle Robert guy. And I thought the guy was nuts. But I went along to get along. I was the proverbial frog in the pot of boiling water. And so my first real red flag with him was we would have these, what he called conferences. We would drive up to northern Idaho, where her parents lived. He would come up from California, and we would sit in a little semicircle and listen to this guy talk for hours and hours and hours on end. To give you a taste of how weird these conferences were, fast forward about 15, 16 years to 2016 at one of our conferences. And again, this is a very tiny cult. There's 4 or 5 adults and then my kids. So there's about a dozen of us. And in 2016, the dominant story in America was the presidential race between Trump and Clinton. And he hated Clinton. So all my children would sit in on these conferences. And so 3 of them, we had 5 children, were under the age of 10 at this moment. And he started to go into the story, the description of the laughing hyena pack in Africa. And in the laughing hyena pack, the female adult who has given birth several times is the dominant animal in the pack, and the male hyena are subservient. And the female hyena, after giving birth, grows this fleshy appendage, just loose skin, I guess, that looks like a penis. And it's bigger than the males. And so the males in the hyena pack are subservient and then lick the groin to this dominant female. And it's kind of disgusting, but that's nature. And then he compared Hillary Clinton to the dominant female. And if she got elected president, she would figuratively strut around the world stage, and the leaders of Germany, Great Britain, wherever else would be figuratively licking her groin. He's literally telling us this. And I've got 3 kids in the room.
Oh my
And
God.
I know you're kind of shaking your head, but
Young
you've heard this
kids.
story before where my kids were like
Oh.
5, 7, 9, something like that.
Yeah,
And
you're
then the
like,
other
I don't
2
want to have
were,
to explain that to them when we leave here.
and because whatever was inappropriate for you or me or someone else was never inappropriate for Uncle Robert.
Okay, let's take a couple steps back because you said something that I just want to make sure I understood. You said that you had these meetings or
Conferences.
lectures.
He
Okay,
called them conferences.
and you said there were 5 people in the cult. So
Well,
he,
there would have been Uncle Robert, his wife, there would have been my in-laws, me and my wife's older brother, because the rest of the family was shunned and ostracized, but he was still around. And there was a brother Michael, there was another guy named George. So some people kind of came and went, but it was less than 10 adults and my 5 kids plus let's say 2 others. There was less than 20 people in this cult.
but no brick and mortar building, no
Nope.
offices, no. Were there tithes? Were there did you have to pay him, or was
So
it just a guy got together once a week and lectured you?
No, not even once a week, more like once or twice a year. But between me and my wife and my in-laws, we would call him almost every day. Now, I didn't do that for years, but they did. But when you talk about tithing, sending him money, this opens up another hilarious can of worms. He taught that the true churches in America were casinos. And the churches that you and I would go to on a given Sunday were fraudulent and a waste of time because only he knew the true gospel. And he was a guy that actually read the Bible and knew it, but only he knew the true gospel. So you're all wasting time going to church on Sunday. The true churches were the casinos because I guess you could go there and regardless of your success in life, your bank account, whatever, the Lord could bless you. To which I would say, okay, but I see people worshiping money in casinos, not the Lord. And oh, by the way, yeah, Andrew, we all would send him tithe money. So we're sending him our tithe money every month, and he's not getting rich off of us. And he would go gamble.
Okay, I could wrap
Oh,
my
the
head
irony.
around. Yeah,
Yeah.
I could wrap my head around you meeting your wife. So you found this beautiful woman and you said she's going to be my wife, and I can see you courting her. I'm actually doing that right now with somebody. So I get the whole concept. And if she introduced me to somebody and she said this person is a religious or spiritual leader and I follow his teachings, and I would probably say, okay, I'd be open to listening to what they have to say, he, they. And but if I found out that there were like 3 other people that listened to him and that was it, and not like a congregation of hundreds of people like Jehovah's Witnesses and LD, those are millions of people. But pick a smaller cult. I don't know, like something like the Branch Davidians or something that were maybe just a couple of hundred. I would just question that right off the bat. Just say, wait, there's 3 of you that talk to him and he tells you not to to sit down. I would just question it.
Well, remember, and I know you know this, but like nobody ever says, "Hi, I'm Robert. I'm a cult leader," and "Hi,
Correct.
I'm
Right.
Paige, and I'm in a cult. Do you want to join?" It's Robert
It's a
is our
slow
spiritual
burn.
advisor, pastor, mentor. Right? It's always something better. It's never a cult leader. Um, and oh, by the way, you also know this as well. Cult leaders hate being questioned, and
Yeah.
so did my wife. She hated the fact that I did question him because you're not supposed to question him. You're just
Did you
supposed to
question
believe
him
him.
or did you question her about him? Or
Both.
both? Yeah.
Both. And so she really did not like the fact that I would question him because every time I questioned him, I would never get an answer. I would always get, "Peter, why are you so stupid that you don't understand me?"
Mm.
Kind of the epitome of gaslighting, right? So let me get
Yes.
back to that. So
Okay.
one of the key red flags that I saw early on in Robert was, having grown up in Northeast New Jersey, I had high school classmates that were in the towers during 9/11. I had a classmate who was widowed. Nobody died, but, still a poignant moment, one that kind of hit home for me. And at one of our conferences, a couple months, maybe a year later, he started talking, and it was a very dark moment. Like I can almost still get chills, and it's been 24, 25 years. And he said Roosevelt was a Jew. Truman was a Jew. 80,000 people died on 9/11. It was all about the Jews. Jew, 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 Jew. I had Jewish friends growing up. I grew up in New Jersey. And I remember thinking like, well, this is really dark. And I had never heard this part of his theology before. So I remember telling Paige that night, I said, "Honey, I don't think this guy is who you think he is. He is dangerous and we should have nothing to do with him." She listened and I never pushed it. I never pressed it. I never said, "Hey, what did you think about what I said?" Now, hindsight 2020, this was before we only had 2 children at the time. If I had pushed it, she might have left me then, and we would have never had 5 kids. Maybe not, I don't know. But his whole theology kind of was centered on, you go back in the Bible, and if you know your Bible, there is Jacob and Esau. They're the twins, and Jacob becomes greater Christendom, which becomes Christians, and Esau becomes Edom, which is biblical, and then becomes modern Jewry. But, it's very convoluted the way he would explain it in his mind. And again, if I'd ever asked, like, well, okay, is there proof that, literally every plane crash and recession is from the Jews? It would be, why don't you understand me? Never proof.
Just
And
take my word for it.
exactly, take my word for it on everything. Sit down
And
to
don't
pay. The
question.
Jews are
And
responsible
don't
for everything.
question.
Right.
Yes.
I don't question, right? Yeah.
So a lot of my questions I swallowed over the years because I loved my wife. I adored her. And I went along to get along. And oh, by the way,
And there was no harm being done. You didn't see any. Right. There was
I was
no child abuse. There was no, I mean, other than maybe some mental instability, but you didn't see any kind of outside or inside or anything happening.
It didn't seem
I was
dangerous.
Didn't seem dangerous. Okay.
I was just you read my mind. I was just about to get to that because, as this is all happening, there is no physical violence. There is no sexual abuse. It's all mental, emotional, and spiritual. And again, I always tell people, it's on the back of my book, you never know you are in a cult. You only know you were in one. I didn't know I was in a cult. I knew it was weird. I didn't like the guy. I kind of wished he would die and go away, but I didn't think it was a cult. So, all of this is going on and it's kind of bizarre, but I love my wife. And so then I would ask questions. So then it pivoted from I'd ask questions because I thought the guy was nuts and I wanted to expose him to, but he's not going away. And my wife respects him and adores him in ways that she doesn't me. Maybe I should jump on board. Maybe I should understand what he knows.
Just one quick question. I know you answered, you talked about tides, but what supported his? Like he's going away. How did he live?
So it brings up another great quote. So he was married to a fairly normal looking and sounding American woman. She had a job, a very good job down in Southern California. She was kind of I think the head of the nurses at a large hospital. So she made probably close to six figures.
Okay.
But before they got married, because here's this guy, again, he was always broke. Like every time I would send him a tithe check, he would email me back like, wow, it couldn't have come at a better time because I'm broke. Well, yeah, go figure. You call the casino your office. But before he married
I
her,
forgot about the casino, right?
yeah. So before he married her, and she obviously was getting, going to have a good career as a nurse, he said, I could be your mission field. And he would tell us the story. I told my future wife, I could be your mission field, which translation means you make the money, I'll spend it. You spend it on me. So, and we would tithe him. So she had a job and then we would send the tithe money, which there was 4 or 5, let's say, families sending him money. Not much.
Do you think he took that and gambled with it?
I can't prove that, but clearly he went there all the time. I mean,
Everything points to that.
everything points to that. So then he would go, and again, one of the indicators of a cult leader is a grandiose sense of self and mission.
Yep.
So he would take one of his little beat up cars that he, probably won at a casino because he was there all the time. He would drive to Washington, D.C., and he would meet with congressmen, with senators and representatives. He would tell us this famous story about meeting with Alan Greenspan, the former chairman of the Fed, and how brilliantly he laid his, pearls of wisdom in front of him. And he would gamble along the way there and back, and the gambling proceeds would pay for his trip. At least that's the story he would tell us.
Did
Now, to
he have
give
a
you an
claim
idea,
to what he was doing with the tithe money? Did he ever say, "You're tithing and this is what I'm doing with that money," or did he never give any explanation for that?
he did a little bit. The explanation I would get was usually from my wife or my in-laws and how incredible he was, how gifted he was. It's amazing. He would go to the casino and he's always blessed. And what he's doing with that money is he would be sharing the true gospel. He would be fulfilling his mission. And his mission was to go and meet with really important leaders in America and basically share his true gospel, which is basically the Jews are behind everything. And the only thing preventing World War III was Uncle Robert and his ability to be a peacemaker and share all of this with important leaders in America. He
Okay.
told us another, kind of outlandish story about how before Gulf War II and the Bush administration invaded Iraq, he sent Saddam Hussein a letter basically telling Saddam back down and give up because you're going to get destroyed, which as it turns out was true. But, then he would tell the story about how, well, if Saddam Hussein had only listened to him, this war could have been avoided. That was the level of his grandiosity. If that is the
Yeah, I was
word.
just going to say grandiosity and insanity almost. To write a letter to Saddam Hussein, which I'm sure he never got.
Right.
Okay. Wow.
So yes, there was no physical or sexual abuse going on, but the brainwashing, the mind control is so
Yeah.
severe. Let me give you 3 stories just to kind of show it to you.
Sure.
And then we'll get into the parental alienation, which is really horrific. I had a wedding band. I lost it, couldn't find it, eventually replaced it and got a new one. And then 10 years later, let's say, I found the original wedding band. It was in like an old grungy coat pocket. And it reminded me of the good old days when I was first married to my wife and I loved her and I thought we had this great marriage. But now 10, 15 years into the marriage, clearly the bloom is off the rose and our marriage is kind of struggling because of Uncle Robert. Well, now I had 2 wedding bands and I couldn't wear 2. And oh, by the way, right around that time, Uncle Robert lost his wedding band. And so basically Paige was like, well, you can't wear 2. Well, I took the hint and I sent my wedding band to him and he wore my wedding band. And I'm like, go to the casino, dude, and win a couple $100 and buy your own wedding band. But that was how deep the brainwashing was with Paige and her parents. And it was like, well, of
Mm.
course, send it to Uncle Robert. What a beautiful thing to do. Then several years later, we had 5 kids. And
By the way, I have no response to that. I'm trying to think. I can't.
all right, well, get ready for this one, Andrew, because it gets exponentially worse. Several years later, we had 5 kids. We talked about having a 6th. And if we have a 6th and if it's a boy, we'll name him Matthew. Okay, so we get dressed up on a date night, and my wife's beautiful clothing, the makeup, and she tells me at the coffee shop of her burning desire to have another boy, but not for me. Uncle Robert had 2 sons, and those sons had daughters. So Uncle Robert had granddaughters, no grandsons. And to Paige, the world was in peril if Uncle Robert's bloodline did not continue with a male heir. She wanted to be, at around age 40, a surrogate and provide Uncle Robert with a male grandson. And I'm repulsed by this idea. I am stunned. I'm furious. So how are you going to do this? Are you going to have sex with one of his sons? She said, no, I would have the pregnancy
IVF.
through in vitro fertilization. What if you have a girl? I would do it again. What if you have 2 girls? I would do it again.
Keep doing it until you get it right.
Yeah. And I had met both of Uncle Robert's sons one time, and those sons had got married. I don't think Paige and I even met the wives. And yet she was so absorbed in his brilliance and how important he was to the world that she wanted to provide him with a male grandson. And thankfully it didn't happen. Well, she left me about a year or 2 after that. I was fully faithful to my wife. I loved her. I never cheated on her, never wanted to. But it got to the point where she doubted my faith. He doubted my faith. All the adults in the cult doubted my faith. They thought I was a fraud. Because what cult leaders do is they act as gatekeepers to God, right?
Yes.
And all of them had been, quote unquote, saved by Uncle Robert. So all of the adults, my wife included, my in-laws, had previous in their life accepted the Lord, been baptized, publicly professed their faith, you name it, as had I. And then Uncle Robert, one by one, would then teach that person that no, they were a fraud, they were lying, they weren't truly saved. So it happened with my wife before we got married. So he, in effect, saved her. And then it happened with her father about a year or 2 into our marriage. And he was convinced that he was a cockroach of a father and a fraud and a demon. And then he only truly became saved when Uncle Robert saved him, because only he knew the true gospel. And then it happened a year later with my mother-in-law. My father-in-law and Uncle Robert treated her like dirt because they didn't want to believe her lies anymore. She had to know that she was no longer faking them, that she was a demonic fraud. And then when he supposedly saved her, he exorcised a demon that came out of her that sounded like a shouting horse. So all of the adults in our little cult had gone through this except me. We had in our 2015 conference, we were all going to share our testimony. And my testimony goes back to when I was a kid in New Jersey. I'm not perfect. I'm a sinner. I needed to be saved. And I recognized that. And I was baptized in my 20s. And I'm literally like a sinner. The only difference is I've been saved, right? That's all you got to do. It's a free gift. So when we shared our testimonies, they didn't believe mine. My wife didn't. Uncle Robert didn't. So I finally caved. I thought maybe I've been missing something my whole life. And I'm mid to late 40s at this point. And allowed myself to be basically manipulated to where, yes, I needed Uncle Robert to save me. And in the back of my mind, I was really thinking, well, maybe this will get my marriage back.
Save your marriage. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Save my marriage. That was really what I was thinking. So that happened in 2015. Then the next year, Paige was still convinced I hadn't done it right. So we tried it again. And that was in the summer of 2016. It's this horrific story that I tell in my memoir, Stop the Tall Man, Save the Tiger. It was this dingy little hotel room in Butte, Montana. And all the adults were there. So it was Paige, me, Uncle Robert, my in-laws, and brother Michael. And they all thought, yeah, I'm a demonic fraud. I've been lying. You really, we're trying to pull a fast one on Uncle Robert. So we tried again for me to be saved. And I look back on it, and really every adult in that room was mentally ill, including me. It was a sick moment where I had to be torn down and treated like a dish rag. Uncle Robert brought up all of my past. Well, what did you do when you were in your 20s and your 30s? And what about this? What about that? And all of that to prove that I was this worthless scumbag of a human being. And I had lied all these years. I had lied the previous year at the conference. And now I was finally ready, with Uncle Robert's approval, to be saved finally. And all of this, of course, is unbiblical. It's wicked and evil. And it still wasn't enough. So within 5 months of that, she left me. And then it was civil for about a month or two. Nobody knew what was going on. So my parents, my brothers, and my in-laws, they live on either coast. So they didn't know what was going on. They weren't part of any of this. They knew Paige and I had this weird Uncle Robert guy, but that was it. So my wife left me. She took the 3 youngest kids to Northern Idaho. The 2 oldest stayed with me because they were in high school and college. And the pivotal moment that really kind of changed all of it was when she told the kids that she had left me. And of course, she couched it in that I was a liar. I was never truly a Christian. So we were never truly married because it wasn't a true Christian marriage in the sight of God. And I told all the kids one on one, I said, listen, I'm sorry. I take full responsibility because I'm still brainwashed at this point. I was brainwashed for about 2 years. And I love you and I love your mom. So then on the phone, I told Paige what I told the children. She said, why did you tell the children you loved me? I said, because it's true. I truly did. I was devastated that my marriage was ending. She said, no, you only thought you loved me. Oh, and that got her goat. Because if you're the child and if daddy loves mommy, then why did mommy leave? Well, there's no way Paige was going to allow the breakup to be her fault. So then she and Uncle Robert started this vicious campaign of telling all 5 children that I was a demonic fraud, I was Satan, I was a sorcerer, and I was no more a bloodline or a sperm donor, not a true father, a bloodline and a sperm donor. Now, 2 years prior, Uncle Robert's bloodline and sperm was so precious and so valuable that Paige was ready to be a surrogate to, save the world and keep his, DNA going. And now it was being used as a pejorative to denigrate me in the eyes of my children. And that was one of the first aha moments after she left me, where I finally started to see, wait a minute, Uncle Robert's not perfect. My wife is not perfect. There's something wrong here. I was never suicidal. Sorry, go ahead.
Real quickly, I would also, and I know this is hindsight, and I know you were in the grasp of the brainwashing and the gaslighting, although you were starting to emerge. But I would have challenged Uncle Robert that he couldn't have a grandchild, he couldn't pass on his lineage, so he was imperfect. I would have found something to counter. If he was attacking you, I would have said, well, if I'm a fraud, you're a fraud. But that's hindsight. So I'm just
Yeah. Well,
thinking outside the box.
and it was obvious to everybody, that this guy is a weird kind of nut job, but obviously
Everybody but to your wife and yeah.
and my in-laws and the other people in the cult and me at the moment. And so this was 2017 when this happened. I was not suicidal, but I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was a wreck. I was, Lord, I'm ready. If you want my life, take it. But again, never suicidal, but I hit rock bottom. And I always tell people, I was dragged on rock bottom. And so during this time when she had left me, there was one person I was talking to, and I thought, well, if anybody can save my marriage, it's this person. And you'll never guess who that person was. Uncle Robert. Because I thought,
No.
well, he knows better. He knows me. He knows Paige. He's the only one that could save my marriage. And so I was talking to him during this whole time. And he is convinced that, you are incapable of salvation. Peter, you have a legion of demons in you. And in the court of, holy opinion, Paige is the prosecutor and you're the defendant, and she's ripping you to shreds because you have no defense because you're a liar and you're not saved. I'm hearing all this. I would talk to him on the phone for hours and hours as I'd wander around town sobbing because my marriage is crumbling and my family's being torn apart. And I'm being convinced that I am doomed to go to hell.
By the way, I'm sorry, did you mention what you did you were a sportscaster during all this time?
Well, around this time, by the time she left, I was mostly selling real estate. My broadcasting career kind of took a nosedive. And then I switched to real estate. So I had flexibility with all of this. And you're thinking, well, good Lord, Peter, why were you listening to this guy? Well, hey, I've been brainwashed for maybe only about 2-3 years. And Uncle Robert would tell this story that was on par with like 9/11 or Pearl Harbor on December 7th. He claimed he only sinned once in his life. He was a little boy growing up in Syria. His father gave him a slingshot and instructions how to use it. He disobeyed once, he threw the rock, and by accident, hit one of the family goats and killed it. And he would tell this story, and there'd be like a hush over the room with the other adults in our little cult, as if they believed it, like that was the only time he sinned in his life. So, you think, well, pretty hard to be humble and realize that you need salvation when you've only sinned once. But that was the level of the brainwashing and the veneration for this man. But when the whole thing with the sperm donor and the bloodline came to light, I thought, wait a minute, this is wrong. So I reached out to my family, and months later, finally started telling people in Montana where I live what was going on. Nobody knew.
We'll be right back after a quick break.
Don't go anywhere. More Cultimatum is coming up.
And I started to reach out to them, and they immediately wrapped their arms around me, figuratively, and supported me in this. And she eventually filed for divorce. I'll kind of fast forward through this. She filed for divorce. I didn't want the divorce. I fought it. I still love the woman, despite everything that she said to me. And then, when the lawyers got involved, we got a garden ad litem involved. They immediately saw the cult influence, which is abusive to children. Again, not physically or sexually.
Doesn't have to be. It could.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's all emotional,
Emotionally.
mental, and spiritual abuse. Say it again.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same emotional and mental abuse and spiritual abuse.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So the garden ad litem wrote a jaw-dropping 50-page report, and the kids, 3 young kids who were living with their mother, who's not a drug addict, not in jail, they sent them back to me. And so about a year and a half after she took them to Northern Idaho, they got sent back to me, and they lived with me for most of the time.
Good.
2 youngest still live with me, and mom had supervised visits for 6 years. So even though I was only brainwashed for about 2.5 years, it took a full year from, again, a couple months after she left, where I'm starting to say, wait a minute, maybe Uncle Robert is not perfect, to where I could finally say, yeah, it was all his fault. Now, as a dad and a husband, I did not do my job of protecting my wife and my family. That is on me. That's my fault. But when it comes to everything else about the breakup of my family and my marriage, it's not on me.
No.
I fought as hard as I could to save my marriage. So that's how kind of the veil started to lift as my eyes and ears were opened. One of the members of the cult who kind of had been out of it for a while, I don't even use his real name because he asked me not to. I call him George Bookman in my book. He anonymously sent me a book by Dr. Stephen Hassan about combating cult mind control. And I remember I got it, and I'm like, oh, come on. I thought it was one of my brothers who sent it to me. It wasn't a cult. Come on. And it sat on my bookshelf for months, and I finally read it, and Mildred and Andrew, I'm highlighting half the book.
The Bible.
Oh, yeah. I bet.
This was the book with the Bible?
Yeah, this is a cult.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
this is a cult. And I didn't want to be a cult survivor. I didn't want to say, hey, look at me. My trauma is better than yours. I survived a cult. I didn't think that. I thought that was weird, but it wasn't a cult. But after I read that book, and now I've read about a dozen books on cults, and if Uncle Robert was not a cult leader, that doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist, no.
So
So at that point, you're officially out. The wife is divorced. You got custody of the kids. I think you said you ended up getting all 6 of them. 5?
No.
5.
No, only the youngest 3. The older 2 were now aged out. So they were in
Aged
college
out.
and high school, so they were beyond the jurisdiction of the courts. And the divorce took 3 years because I wasn't in a hurry. I still thought
You wanted
that
to
the
save
Lord
the
could
marriage.
salvage our marriage, and what an amazing testimony, right? Look what we came out of. And our marriage is saved.
I got no
Didn't
problem with that. I got no problem with that.
Are any
Didn't
of your
happen.
kids still part of this group?
So as I recovered and I became a much stronger man, the Lord really gave me a ton of strength and patience and discernment and perseverance and wisdom. It all comes from Him. So I no longer tiptoe around a wife I'm afraid of. I no longer tiptoe around a cult leader I'm afraid of. I have been strengthened by this. Okay, I say all that to preface that with my children, it's kind of a mixed bag. So the 2 youngest live with me. The youngest is probably my most mature child. I mean, she's brilliant. She's 14. She read the book. She gets it. She still loves her mom, as do all the kids.
Right.
The 2 oldest are on their own, living on their own, and they still probably, I would say, think mom's right and dad's wrong. I don't think they have anything to do with Uncle Robert anymore. Robert Booty is his name. The middle child is probably the most difficult one to talk about. She lived with me for 5 years, along with the other 2 siblings. And during that time, mom had supervised visits. But then the day after she, graduated high school and was no longer part of the parenting plan, mom was there for the graduation. She had a supervised visit the next morning, dropped them off. I came back 3 hours later, like I've been doing for, 5 years at that point. And there was a sheriff's vehicle in the parking lot. And I knew as soon as I showed up, I knew why that sheriff was there. Sure enough, mom just convinced her your life's in danger. Who knows what he's going to do? He's going to abuse you. He's going to kill you. He's going to this or that, and terrified my daughter. So she
Mm,
left. And within 3 weeks, Paige had sent a update to the judge and to the court. Listen to what my daughter says, and we would play cards every night, my daughter. We didn't have a perfect relationship, but I loved her, and we were
right.
good buddies. And we were like attached at the hip for 5 years. And now my daughter, 3 weeks later is telling the court that I'm a biological sperm donor. That's what she would call me. And so she's broken off all contact with me, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard. I always tell people that parenting is a marathon, not a sprint. And so I pray for my children. And one day, I hope to have a relationship with her again. And
You
it's
will.
going to be hard because Paige has kind of made it obvious she has no plans to co-parent with me.
How old is she now?
She's 20.
Not knowing her, them, or anybody, but I think being under the influence of your wife, ex-wife, she's going to, at 20 years old, we know the mind isn't completely formed yet.
Right.
She was severely influenced by her and this brother, Uncle Guru.
Whatever you call him.
Uncle Robert.
And I think over the next few years, maybe 5, 10, whatever, I think she'll come around and just realize that when she's exposed to the real world, that this guy was a kook, and mom might lean in the kook area too, and maybe she'll come around.
Yeah.
I'm
And
just trying to give you hope.
certainly, and my guess is if she starts to wake up, you'll probably be the first person she calls. That or one of her
Agreed.
siblings. Yeah.
Agreed.
And that's my hope, right? That's my hope that,
Yeah.
and maybe what it'll take is for the kids to become married or to become parents and then be like, wow, this is really hard. And why
if
did I? Yeah.
If she's
Yeah.
close with either of her brothers or sisters, they might even pull her in and go, "Hey, what are you doing to Dad?" Like if
Right.
there's many things are possible. So
And I'll add this too, that, despite all the unbelievably horrible things my wife, I mean, she's tried to get me arrested. She said all these horrible things about me in court documents, not just, oh, you're crazy. No, he is a devil. Despite all of that, she'll always be their mom. And I have to
Right.
respect that. And
Yes.
she too is a victim. I mean, she really
Oh,
is. She
absolutely.
knows no other world other than the
Yes.
one dominated by Robert.
yeah,
Yes.
as
No,
many
she's
cult
brainwashed.
members who are, anybody who's still in a cult we don't judge them. We consider them victims, and we hope that our podcast and cult podcast and the guests that come on like yourself will do justice and help get the word out that these cults have to. Okay.
Yeah.
We got maybe about 5-10 minutes left. I want to get to. So, would it be fair to say that the end? You didn't leave. You were kind of like thrown out, but you left. Was there a deconstruction for you, or was it just like you knew right away? Because you had your doubts all along, except for maybe 1 or 2 years.
Sounds
Did
like
you
reading that
go through a
book.
deconstruction process?
Say it again, Melody. Sounds like what?
Sounds like reading Stephen Hassan's book was the beginning of your deconstruction.
Okay, that would work.
It was very helpful. I would say it started before that. My Christian faith is what I believe really kind of brought me through it. And in a tangible aspect, it was my friends and family, the believers, who would say, hey, wait a minute, he said what? He said this? Because cult leaders control their members through isolation, paranoia, and secrecy to where you only hear one voice. And so for years, the only voice I heard was Robert's. Well, now I'm hearing other voices that are saying, wait a minute. And as I hear voices from other people that I respect, because I had hidden all this about Uncle Robert, now that they know, and I respect these other voices, they are helping me see. They're helping me through this. A lot of prayer, a lot of Bible reading, a lot of good discussions with people that I respect and know, and then a lot of reading. It was all of that did.
And how did the memoir help you with your deconstruction? That must have helped as well.
Unbelievable. Incredibly therapeutic and cathartic.
Yeah, good.
So what happened was, we had this court battle that just took a long time. The attorneys, the guardian ad litem, the judge, they all see it. The parenting evaluator, it takes 5 minutes. They all see the problem. But we still had to go through the courts. So my attorney said, can you just give us a timeline, Peter, when you were married, when the kids were born, et cetera? Well, that one-page document became 5, became 20. And then during COVID, I just sat on my typewriter and I couldn't stop writing.
Right.
And to be able to figure out 20 years of, oh my goodness, this is what happened. I can put the puzzle pieces together, because what I haven't told you, and you need to go read the book, the whole reason why the title is Stop the Tall Man, Save the Tiger sounds bizarre. It all goes back to a dream Paige had about a month or two before she met me. And to me, the dream, it all goes back to that, because Uncle Robert was able to take the dream, which I believe was a warning from God. Can't prove it, but I think it was. And Uncle Robert turned it on its head and made him the hero, and really Paige the victim or the villain who needed to be saved by him. And in the dream, there's a tall man that comes to kill the tiger. And I'm 6'5", and Robert pawned himself off, who's 5'6", as the tall man. And I believe the tiger was him. And he manipulated the dream. And really, Paige spent the better part of our entire marriage defending the tiger, protecting the tiger from me, the tall man, to try and expose him. So to be able to put all that together after 20 years was unbelievable.
Wow. Yeah. That's pretty insightful. Those are the kind of stories I hear, Andrew, and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not agnostic, because those are the things that I hear where I'm like, how do you explain that without some kind of higher power out there to put that all together?
It was a crazy 23-page letter. Literally, I'm a historian. I love history. And I saw the original letter. She kept it, and then I made a copy of it. He wrote it on a Wednesday, mailed it from Washington, D.C., because remember, he's there visiting, sharing his pearls of wisdom. Sent it on a Friday, and Paige and I met that Sunday, 1996. And she had the dream about a month or two prior.
Where is this person today, Brother Guru?
Oh, Uncle Robert?
Uncle
He still lives,
Robert.
as far as I know. He's in Southern California in his 80s, as far as I know.
And is he gaslighting a whole bunch of new people, or do you think he's just in a rocking chair somewhere just waiting for heaven to come knocking?
I
or
don't
hell?
know. That's a good question. The courts basically said, he's not allowed to have any contact with the younger
Oh,
children.
good.
So then
Good.
my last contact with him was in 2018, and I said, I will help enforce this. Leave us
Good.
alone. Bye.
So
Get
you have
lost.
not spoken, heard from him, communicated, and nor has he.
8 years.
And Paige,
Good.
when's the last time you spoke to her?
Well, we unfortunately have to interact monthly because she still comes down for visits, and they're still tense. She's called the sheriff on me, I don't know how many times, just because she doesn't trust me. She literally, I'm not making this up, she refused to come to Montana for visits for about 8 months, almost a year, because she was convinced I had a judge in my back pocket. She never told me which judge. I don't know any judges. And that I was going to get her arrested. I kid you not. That was literally what she said. Because we were supposed to have a parenting evaluation in Montana, which she had pushed for, but she refused to come to Montana. So the evaluator's like, well, why won't you come to Montana? Well, Peter's going to get me arrested because he's got some unnamed judge in his back pocket. I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah.
My
And
guess
that's just,
is
I mean,
that
that
came
stuff
from
happens all the
Uncle
time.
Robert. That thought came from Uncle Robert. That
exactly.
would be my
That's
guess.
exactly what I was thinking. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So he was feeding this to her. Absolutely.
Well, it's the paranoia, right? It's the paranoia.
Yes.
That's how they control you. And he is very good at that, at creating paranoia.
Before I ask you, so we got to begin to wrap up and ask our last questions, and I'll give you a chance to just to say any maybe something you haven't been able to, you wanted to get out. But there's one question that I want to ask, and I think I know what the answer is, but do you think, and I can roughly guess about approximately your age, are you single still, and do you think you'll ever move on and find new romance with another woman, or are you?
Yeah. So no, it's a great question. I am single. I had a girlfriend that we broke up in December. It was the first girl I dated since my divorce.
Good.
So I got
Good and
divorced in
bad.
2020.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And I was a single dad with 3 kids. I was too busy. I was writing books, selling real
Yeah,
estate.
that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. But so no, I truly hope that the Lord will provide another spouse. I don't want to
So
go
you're
through that
open
my
to
life.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's what I was, because this entire interview, I keep hearing, and I understand because I have another podcast about dating and relationships, and I came from some pretty horrific relationships where I stayed in toxic relationship way past their expiration date. I kept hearing you talk about this woman, your wife, as the best thing that ever happened to you, and she was your love of your life, and I was just wondering if she still had a space in your heart or something.
Here's how I could answer that is that, again, I hate divorce. I most times
Oh,
I
it's
call her my
that's yeah.
I
Again,
call I
that's
most often I often call her former wife because I hate ex-wife. I hate divorcee, divorce, all that. But
okay.
it happened, and I still held out hope for several years, but she remarried a few years ago. So
There
when
you
that
go.
happens, you're done, right? So
Time to move. Yeah, okay.
That
That
helps
yeah,
well, that's
solidify
the fine.
things.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Okay.
exactly.
Maybe I should have asked that first. It would have got right to the point. Okay, I think I know the answer to this. In many cults, when people get out, so Jehovah's Witness, Latter-day Saints, Mormons, pick one, and they get out, they go through the deconstruction process. I like to ask them where they are in their faith. So because sometimes Judaism or Christianity or whatever was shoved down their throats and for 20 years, and now they're finally free. But you were brought up, you said you were brought up a Christian in on the East Coast. Where's your faith today? Do you have a God in your life, a religion in your life? Do you practice religion?
Yeah. So the answer to that question would be that, without my faith in Jesus Christ, I would not be here. I literally
Okay.
do not think I would have been able to survive this. And so, to those who are listening, Christian or not, there's a great story in the Bible. It's in the book of Luke, so one of the Gospels, chapter 8. There's a guy living outside of town, and he's demon possessed. So he's living in the caves. Christ comes and heals the man. And the man, obviously now in his right mind, begs Christ, "Can I follow you?" And Christ gives kind of a curious answer. He says, "No, I got something more important for you. I want you to go home and tell everyone what the Lord has done for you." Well, I don't really think I was possessed by a bunch of demons, but that's what I do. I now share, "This is what the Lord has done for me."
You're spreading
I
the
don't
word.
I don't say it in an arrogant way. I was an absolute failure to nothing. Look how faithful the Lord is. Look what he has rescued me from. So yes,
Mm.
my faith is stronger than it has ever been.
And
That's amazing.
I don't know if I want to dig further, but do you attend services or is
Well,
it a silent, private
you know,
relationship you have with Jesus?
I do go to church, which again, it's perceptive of you to bring it up because again, like we would go to church after church after church and then leave because Paige would get on the phone and say, "Well, the pastor said this, so we'd have to leave," right?
We have to leave.
We
Yeah.
were smarter than everybody. So going back to church was kind of hard.
Hard.
And you
Yes.
know what? Like I love my church and I love my pastor. Do I agree with him on everything? Absolutely not. And that's
No.
okay.
Well, and I think I have to say it. I was brought up a Roman Catholic, devout Roman Catholic church in New York, outside of New York City. And yeah, I remember my parents were very much involved with the Catholic Church, and every Sunday we'd hear the sermon. But I would hear my parents argue, or not argue, but talk about what they heard. And sometimes they would talk to us about it. And of course, I went to Catholic high school, so many times whatever. So yeah, I can understand that whole concept of, and that's the way it should be. The priest, because the priest gets up there and talks about something, it's his sermon, but it's for you to interpret the way that's a
Right.
real religion. That's not a cult. That's something that's here's my thoughts, take it and do what you will with it, and use it
And,
to your advantage or knowledge. I
and
think that's what a pastor or priest or reverend should do.
here's how I would maybe kind of put a bow on this little part of
Okay.
our discussion is that the truth doesn't mind being questioned. If you really know the truth,
Good.
ask
Absolutely.
it anything. There's nothing to
Yes.
hide, right?
Exactly.
Yes. I like that.
In all aspects of life, politics and in
Right.
economics and in philosophy, if you don't question, you'll never.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
there
don't know
was
what the
actually
rest of the thought
another
is, but
there was another interview we did. I don't know if you remember this, Andrew, but she had a friend tell her when she was waking up from her cult and said to her, "If your religion can't be questioned, perhaps it's time to question your religion."
your religion. Ooh,
And
yes, I do
that
remember
was
that. I
pretty,
don't remember the
yes.
episode, but I remember that phrase.
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay, Melody has
So,
a
yes.
follow up question.
My final question is if somebody's listening that might be finding themselves in a similar situation that you were in, and they're starting to wake up or starting to question where they're at or what they believe or whether or not they're in a cult, what would be your words of advice to them?
Well, it's almost like what I would tell that person would be similar. It's kind of on the way in and the way out. And the only way that a cult can really work, I believe, is where the person is completely cut off. So again, in Christian theology, it talks about the body of Christ, right? Okay, if I cut my thumb off, I'm not going to die. My thumb will die, but I won't. So if you're that thumb, if you're the one person or the two or the three, and you get cut off from all your other friends and your fellow believers, now you are vulnerable and susceptible, and you're in a very dangerous position. I don't know if anybody who's truly in a cult who has undue mind control going on would really recognize it. It's the friends and family around them
Right.
who can then remove that person from the situation and then help that person to say, I've heard you say this, or I've heard you say that, or you stopped coming to Friday night beers, you stopped coming to book club. What's going on? It's
Yeah.
when you're isolated that you're most vulnerable. And so
Mm.
avoid the isolation.
Good advice.
Interesting.
Very good
Very
advice.
good. Two different answers tonight. I like that. So, Peter, where can anybody listening find you online? Where can they find your book? Are you on Instagram, TikTok, any of the social medias?
Sure. Yeah, I'm on all of those. Well, I'm not on TikTok, but I am on Instagram and Facebook. Best place is to go to my website, which is authorpeteryoung.com. So it's real simple.
Very
My
simple.
book is Stop the Tall Man, Save the Tiger. It was an Amazon bestseller. So you just go to Amazon
Oh, good.
and you can buy it. And I would love for you to read it because again, it's pretty intense.
Okay.
It gets pretty dark.
Oh, I can
Two-thirds
imagine.
of the way in. But
You
but
had me from the he heard me peeing in the
yeah,
bathroom.
but But there's a happy ending, right? Like, you can hear me
Right.
laughing now. Like,
Yes.
there was redemption at the end. Do I still have a difficult road ahead? Yeah, I do. But, I could tell you one of the lessons that I learned, and maybe this is what will end what I've got to share, is I learned through all of this, there's a difference between happiness and joy. And happiness is, a wife that loves you, as a car, as a bank account, is, you hit the game-winning shot, whatever. Joy has to come from within. And even though I
Yeah.
lost my marriage and I've got a difficult relationship with some of my kids and I'm flat broke, I have joy. And joy comes from the Lord because of what I've been through, and I've learned so much that my external circumstances might affect my happiness, not my joy.
I love that. I love that.
I don't know how to. I think we should end it there. That was beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Yes.
beautiful. And Peter, Melody will put all of that information, the book, the website, and Instagram and Facebook in the show notes. And
Yes.
I encourage, and when anybody comes on, I always ask this because I do like to read the books of our guests. It's two reasons that I don't get to do them often. Is one because I'm not a good reader because I don't I have ADD, and so my question is, will it ever be an audio version?
I need to do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
and as a former broadcaster, I don't shy away from hearing my voice. I just haven't done it yet.
And podcasting is all I do. So I'm
Right.
listening to all day long, morning, and night. I'm listening to audiobooks and podcasts. So for me to listen to that book, I could do it in probably 24 hours, and I would get more out of it than trying to read it because I'd put it down every. But you
Right,
get the
right.
idea. So
Yeah.
yeah, let us know if it ever gets to the audio version. So
I will. Yeah.
Everybody, Peter Young, thank you so much for joining us. What a very, very interesting, different cult story tonight. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you
Yes.
very
Thank
much
you,
for having me
Peter.
on.
We appreciate it.
Thank you, Melody.
All right.
And once again, we want to thank Peter so much for coming on the show. And Peter actually reached out to us on Facebook, found us through one of the Facebook groups. And I am so glad he did. What a unique cult story, but
Wow.
certainly had all the cult dynamics. Yeah, crazy, kind of
Yeah.
definitely unique and different.
I need to apologize to the audience, to Peter, and to any cult survivor out there. When he told me that this guy was listening to him pee, and then told me that he could that whatever, it just I laughed. It was just the funniest thing I've ever heard because it was bizarre.
Yeah.
So, but I don't ever want to diminish what cult tactics and coercion control. It's not a funny thing, but I just want to apologize. But it what I,
Well, it
I mean, come
certainly
on.
highlighted that it started with something really simple and small, but yet it really did show and highlight
Blew up.
how
Blew up.
invasive it
Yep.
was, how controlling it
Yep.
was, and how weird it was. It just really that should have been that probably
I,
looking back would have been his first red flag if we had asked him that question, since it
oh,
was the first story he told. That was red flag number
I,
1, but he missed it. He missed it. He
Melody, if
just
I
thought, "This
walked
guy's weird."
no disrespect to you, Peter, and I can't say this for sure, but if I was in somebody's house and I was using the bathroom and I opened the door and there was a man or anybody standing there saying you're peeing, you should be peeing sitting down because that's blah, blah, I would grab my coat and jacket and I'd be out of there so fast because I would say this is a creepy, very weird.
Well,
But
yeah, it was certainly
anyway,
crossing a line for sure.
it definitely crossed the line, absolutely so. But Peter, thank you. That was just and I would thank you. Please do send the PDF. I will like to read that. And I just realized that the Macs do read. Any computer will read to you a PDF or a book these days.
But that's good to know.
You just have the right app. So I would like to read
Very
that.
good.
So
So, well, thank you again to Peter for coming on the show and sharing his story and about his book and all the stuff. And as always, thank you to all of you as well for tuning into Cultimatum. We do appreciate your support in our mission to expose the truth and highlight the voices of these survivors.
if you're enjoying the show, please take a moment to rate and review us on Apple and Spotify, podcast and Spotify. It really helps people. This is just one. I got the giggles.
The giggles
It
now.
really helps people to find. Yeah. And no, I did not take any gummies because I don't do that. It really helps people find the podcast. And don't forget to follow, share, and keep tuning into our latest episodes.
You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and YouTube for additional content and updates.
And be sure to join our Facebook community, Cultimatum Podcast, where we dive deeper into these important topics and remind you when new episodes are available.
And if you are a cult survivor and you are looking for additional support and connection, we invite you to join the Cult Escape and Healing Group on Facebook.
You can find more information about the show, the Anonymous Andrew Podcast Studios, and our full legal disclaimer on our website, the Anonymous Andrew, it's anonymousandrewpodcaststudios.com, or simply just go to Google. I did check it today. Just simply go to Google and type in Anonymous Andrew, and everything about us, all the podcasts, Cultimatum, comes right up.
And if you have a story related to cults or human trafficking that you would like to share on the show, please reach out to us at cultimatumpodcast@gmail.com.
If you'd like to support the show, you can do so by using the link in the top of the episode description notes, and it says, buy us a cup of coffee. Your support helps cover production costs and allows us to keep bringing you these stories to light. And while you are hearing sponsors on here, they do not pay the bills. They are just little perks that I grabbed just to help maybe pay a little bit of it. But thank you for all those who have donated to the show so far.
Yes, absolutely. And pennies. Literally, we get pennies for the ads that we have running right now. So just in
silly.
perspective, it's pennies.
It's
So,
silly.
but
It is.
yes, but we do appreciate any amount that you could donate helps. $5, $10, it makes a difference. And as always,
And you know what's funny?
Yeah, go ahead.
But real quick, just on that note, it's funny because at the end of the year, I have to file taxes on those pennies.
Yes.
So people are laughing, but I think last month we made $9, and so I have to report that to the IRS. It's like, really?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, go ahead. Say your last line.
As always, stay safe, stay informed, and remember, you are not alone.